wasn't sure, and the platform is everything. I don't care. People, I like the authentic thing that I'm in the middle of a sentence and suddenly, ta-da!
Well, 6 hours left, so I wouldn't talk too soon.
No, ta-da! Yeah, good to go. Hey guys, live. Listen, guys, go. We want to go backstage. Me and Talia and Dani are having too much fun. So me and Talia and Dani have a lot of talks, and we actually have an amazing and interesting announcement that I've been trickling down in different sessions. And we're going to tell you the end of the session because we're 6 and growing, and we're going to grow for more people. It's all about Kick-Ass Dani and Talia, Klein, Parrots, yeah. So both community monsters with crazy track records. Talia, super diverse, built the community and pioneer an amazing platform for online payments, a $1 billion company, all because of what Talia built in the community there, only because of Talia, nothing else. All the rest of the company is, just because of the community. I'm joking. But yeah, the community was really great and was in charge of a lot of the revenues and impact, and was really great and really grew. I think it was in 7 countries. Talia will tell you all about it in the end. And also Dani, today Senior Director of Customer Community and Growth. I love it. It's like the longest title, but the best ever, and well deserved. Dani was just appointed an amazing other Israeli unicorn called Kaltura, and he's building the community. Kaltura tried to build community and didn't really, because it didn't bring Dani. And now they brought Dani, and now it's going to have a real community. And Dani is going to teach you how he built communities in HP for 6 years, and in Domo from zero to millions. Not millions of users, but millions of dollars saved to the organization. What does it mean to support community? What, isn't all communities doing support? No. Support community is a one type of community. So Dani's and Talia is going to tell you about the process in a corporate. I know we're spread thin, and maybe a lot of people went to the mindfulness because they can't hear me anymore. But don't worry, I'm going to hide myself and let Talia and Dani facilitate and do this talk and give you a lot of insight. And I'll be just on the feed in the back, helping you guys raise your hand and put you on stage. And in the end, as I said, we have an announcement that me and Dani and Talia have been working on. I'm not even sure that we're aligned, but we'll all say about it. And it doesn't matter. We're all about authenticity, right? And as we go. So great. Hiding myself, giving you the stage. Enjoy.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
So let me know when you guys can see my desktop.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So again, we modified a little bit of the title, broadened the scope here because we got a lot of great content, but we're certainly going to touch upon support communities. And really, Mike gave us a great intro. Dani Weinstein have been in the space for 12 years. And as Mike said, recently joined Kaltura after, many years with HP and with Domo, building out both B2C and B2B communities. Talia, I'll give you a minute to introduce yourself here.
I've also been working with online communities for over 14 years now. I started out at Meta Cafe, which is a video platform similar to YouTube, but before YouTube. And I worked through several different video companies until starting at Payoneer. At Payoneer, I also built the community from scratch, and I had like 4 or 5 languages within a year, and it continued to grow into countless languages as we saw certain communities and certain people needing the platform, the community platform. Using the platform, we had people from everywhere. And now for the last 5 years, I've been advising companies, mostly high-tech companies, but all kinds of companies that want to build communities online, and I've been advising them about everything from where they should even be opening it to how to run it, building yearly plans and everything.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited that Talia's here with me. So the format today is I've got 2 of my most desired presentations I combined into one. And again, this will be interactive. We have the Q&A window open in the conference, so feel free to chime in there. Talia's going to keep an eye on that. And after the presentation, we're going to have more of a fireside chat. So let's take a step back and think about what community is. This is simply a definition from Merriam-Webster, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people. But really, it's everything about having a common need, a common desire, a common set of knowledge. Feeling connected, all those things is really about, community. And community, the online communities that we all know and love, these conversations did not just start happening with the invention of the internet. Really, and if we think about especially support, these conversations have been happening for generations. Our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents would be meeting at a neighborhood barbecue, a kid's game, and if, for example, you had a problem with your car, you weren't going to go and call, Toyota or Ford as your first person to call. You're going to go talk to your friend John or Mary, who knows cars. The same thing if you got a problem with your refrigerator. You're not going to go and call, GE or Philips. That's probably your last call. You're going to go and reach out to your trusted friend, to your community. And really, the internet has transformed these conversations into a dramatic online experience, which is also complemented by the offline experience. So as you come in and you start thinking about, you get hired at a new brand, or you're talking about, or even if it's not, work, or maybe it's personally related, you want to build out a community and connect those people together, but you need to convince the stakeholders on the value add for that community. You really need to go through a process of understanding the following. How do the owners of that experience or that brand, how are they being measured? So what are the brand's objectives? For example, what's your CEO's objectives? What's your C-level executives' objectives? How are they being measured? What are the KPIs that's cascade down through the organization? Because that's typically the language that they understand. And as you have a clear understanding of why the brand is in business and how they make money and how they're being measured for success, you can then tie in the value proposition that a community and having your customers connected to each other and customers connected to your brand will provide to the business. And so you want to basically identify what those things are, and you want to try to find some quick wins to establish what we call a beachhead to really deliver quick value for a community, but also have a longer term plan to continually add value across the business. And so I'm going to focus really on this, the first part of the discussion. And I came up with this model in the last several months around the fact that, community is no longer about, sitting in marketing or sitting in support or sitting in education and engineering. It really can provide value across the business. We'll certainly have an emphasis today about poor communities a little bit later. But really, it's this MSE model where there's clear value that can be delivered to, the CMO, the VP of support, the head of education, and certainly the head of engineering. And so if we think about that, from a marketing perspective, community really is pulling together your super fans and your advocates, and that has a direct tie into managing your advocacy and how the brand is promoted. Your top customers are those people are certainly going to be the most passionate about your brand, and getting them together and getting them connected to you and to your brand allows you to then have them involved in activities that can help promote the brand. And so building that relationship with them, and in many cases, those folks will be willing to speak at conferences and user groups and meetups to share, they want to share their story. They want to promote their knowledge of your brand and of your product. And certainly as they do that, it has a direct impact on the value to the business. From a support perspective, once you've built out, that community, you need to be able to measure the success. And so if you do surveys, let's say in your community, and you can measure the traffic and you ask customers, did they find the information that they were looking for? Have they already contacted support before they arrived? Are they intending to contact support after they arrive? And this is a fairly simple model. Let's say your business or your community has 1 million visitors a year, and you go through the surveys. And again, it's usually a quick survey after they've been to the site for 90 seconds. It'll pop up, or it could be a stagnant one that's on every page. But let's say that 60% of the customers who come in, they say they find the information they are looking for. They say 90% of the time it's their first visit to the community, and they have not yet contacted support. And after they visited the community, 80% still plan on not contacting support after the fact. And so you can put this simple model in place where you've got 1 million times 60%, times 90% times 80, that gets you down to about 432,000 customers. Well, if you, again, this is basically saying you want to capture those people who have not reached out to support, they've come to the community, they found information they were looking for, and they're not intending to contact support after the fact. That represents potential support deflection. And if you know, let's say your average cost to serve a customer in a support case is $25, well, you can see in the bottom right corner here, then you can get to a potential savings of $10.8 million on an annual basis. So again, this is a classic support deflection model. There's much more to this than what I'm sharing here. On the education side, as content is created in community, you ask a question, someone else answers that question, and it's marked as a solution. Those solutions can become knowledge-based articles for your, again, as certified articles. And so this actually adds bandwidth to your education team and your technical writing team, because great content is being produced by your customers and by your users in your community. And those solutions, which have been marked by the customer as, yes, this solved my problem, can then be converted into a certified article that's then published in the company's knowledge base. And just industry examples, Salesforce and Okta have presented in the past. And again, the better content that you're able to provide in community has a direct correlation with greater adoption of your product. Again, the more that customers can learn, easier and quicker your product, it has a direct tie into adoption. And they both have experienced 33% higher adoption with the value out of community. And the same thing is true. It adds to the stickiness for your customers to stay with you longer. If you've got a healthy community that's providing rich content, both these companies have experienced 3 times less attrition with a healthy community. On the engineering side, this is a great opportunity. Again, your customers are the most active users of your product in many cases, and allowing them to have a single place to crowdsource and vote up ideas to make your product better, to have a conversation about a new feature set, to engage with engineering and feel like they're part of the extended team. This one-to-many framework can actually save hundreds of engineering hours, which typically are used to review emails or single feedback cases through support on a single feature set. In this case, you potentially could have 50 customers talking in the same conversation about a new feature. And with that, you can see all the various comments. You can see who's behind those comments, how much value does that add to the business. And that helps to prioritize potentially your product roadmap. So to summarize, community really is this new business horizontal, and it becomes transformational across multiple verticals. Having that ability to communicate that up through the management chain is very important. And again, as you build out that roadmap for quick wins, we will continue to add more value around community. So to summarize, understand the company measures, internalize those cascading KPIs, identify the value for community, communicate that vision, and then put together a plan to execute and deliver on that value proposition. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. Talia, are there any questions that have shown up so far?
No, so far people are saying your slides are awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to pivot a little bit because again, we're serving a global audience here, and this is also very important for the materials that I shared. But I wanted to share my knowledge and experience in building out global communities. So my career at HP, I deployed and managed 7 language communities. We deployed those in 15 months. This is serving a very large audience around the world, millions of users, or I should say, millions and millions of customers, and probably more than 1 billion products in the install base. And so we deployed English, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, Simplified Chinese, and Korean. And again, the HP consumer support organization was very big. The traffic to our website was off the charts, and we had a huge spend, probably close to $1 billion a year on support to serve those customers. Again, website was probably in 30 languages. We had, email support, chat support, remote control support, phone support in many languages. So as you're thinking about community, you really need to understand from a globalization and from a localization strategy, you really need to understand where are your customers, number one. Because again, not everybody speaks English. This is just an example of the word hello in many languages. And as you can see, many languages use Latin-based characters, some use double byte, some read from right to left. The world is not ubiquitous, and not everybody speaks English, although it's become a default for engaging around the globe. And having an understanding of what's their preferred language to speak in, but also to consume content in and even engage in is very important for your strategy. And so you need to ask yourself, what criteria should we consider when building a localization strategy or use case? So again, you want to think about what languages do your customers consume your product in? What existing engagements do you have by language? So if you already have the luxury of knowing the data from your website and seeing the volume of languages that is supported in that language, chat support, email support, whatever it may be, those are great data points because that's going to give you an indication for the potential size of customer base that has the need to engage in that language. And that will help you quantify the volume to build out the business case. And so again, you've got these various channels that are there. And if you don't have those particular things, then trying to figure out, again, more importantly, where do your customers reside and getting that feedback is very important. There's also some very key things around culture that is critical. What I found is that most Western-based languages or regions behave in a similar manner. So South America, EMEA, North America, they typically don't have an issue with having mixed experiences, multi-language in the same environment. As you start getting into some of the more ubiquitous cultures like Japanese, simplified Chinese, becomes more unified where they really prefer to have the entire experience only in their language.
I have to add one more thing. There's another piece of criteria that we like to ignore because when we're on the community side, we would like to be able to provide our audience with the best language and platform for them, but we only have finite budgets. And sometimes our decision-making process isn't necessarily about which languages they prefer to communicate in and which countries our audience is in, but which countries we would like our audience to come from and which countries we would like to invest our money in. And it sounds really horrible, but all of us, at least on the business side, are in the business of making money, and we can't just open every single language community that we'd like to open, and we have to figure out both what's needed and what can benefit us. And it's possible that certain languages, the money that we would get in from those countries aren't significant enough. And it would be better to target a smaller community, but that has a bigger potential for the company. And the biggest problem that you reach with this is when you're called out on it. I don't think anyone's ever literally said, well, you don't have it in X language because we can't make you enough money, but saying there's so many of us that speak this and that language. Why aren't you opening a community in our language? And why did you open one in whatever, in Japanese or in Arabic? And you're not really going to share that with your community, but it's very important to know that just because every single one of these are, big check mark on them and every one of them is relevant, at the end of the day, it needs to be part of the company's roadmap to be able to really make that final decision.
Yeah, that's a great point, Talia. And to that point, as you go through the data, you'll find, if you've got 100 users or customers or members only in that language, that's typically not enough to support a community. You've got to have enough scale to stand up that community and make it healthy. And to your point, these things do not typically come for free. I'm going to get into some of the considerations about how you go about building this out and drive a localization strategy. So here are some additional considerations. Again, if it's a B2B community, that typically are more likely to be doing business in English, for the consumer side, less so. Again, culturally, there's consuming in a non-native language is something you need to know about. The double byte languages, again, a fully localized experience in simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Japanese, Korean. You can even go into, you know, Thai and some of the Indian-based languages. And then, of course, Hebrew and Arabic, particularly on the web, offer an orientation perspective that's totally different, coming, you know, reading from right to left. And so these are things that you need to understand as you go through that. So I'm going to give some actual visual examples. I know this is a pretty heavy slide. We're going to give the slides to everybody later. And there's two approaches here. You can either have, the left side really talks about, you know, we've only got budget for one instance or one server for a community. So again, there's a lot of players out there, whether they be Chorus, Vanilla, Higher Logic, and so forth. But every additional server that you want to open up costs incrementally more money. Now, there are pros and cons to each situation. If you have all your languages in one server, meaning probably your main landing page is in English and you've got sections that are in various languages, then all the content is going to be in one place. You're only having to pay for one server. The search engine is going to search all the content, although the English results will typically dominate the results simply from a volume perspective. You're probably going to have a mixed UI, meaning it's not going to be holistically all Spanish or Portuguese or German. It will have probably some English in there at some point. From a gamification perspective, again, for those people that are familiar with superfan programs, you typically have on the back end a ranking structure. And again, as the more your customers and members contribute, the more posts they have, the more solutions they provide, the more likes they receive, the more content that they're creating, they're going to get higher recognition in the community and they'll be a superstar. Well, if all the volume is happening in the English language, yet I'm a Spanish member in the community, there may be a lot less opportunity to grow and reach the same scale as the English members. And so there you've got to, you know, there are tools that some platforms have, which is called bonus points, where the administrator can actually interject and bump people up or promote people up if they've done something amazing, even though they haven't reached the automated level of gamification. The other factor that's got to be worked through is the navigation. You know, if your product is localized in, let's say, Spanish, it knows that you are a Spanish user based on your defaults, that you've got settings in your product. And as you click into the community, it would take you straight into the Spanish experience. So all those elements are fully integrated. And the benefit here is that you have a single account for being a member in that community, which is also good for moderators who are covering multiple languages. So that's the benefit. The downside is that, again, you've got that mixed experience, which may not please everybody. The right side talks about, you know what, I need to have a dedicated server for each language. And this is what we did early on in HP. The benefit is that you can truly have a fully localized experience. Every element will be in that language. The entire experience will be fully localized. It is more costly. The search optimization is then optimized for that language. The gamification can be unique or tailored to that particular environment. So again, if you're not going to get the same scale, let's say, as English, you can make those tiers a lot lower for a smaller community. The challenge here, though, becomes when it's, again, aside from it being more costly, is if they want to go and consume the content in English, they can certainly navigate over to the other community. But in many cases, what happens is it's a different login, it's a different account. Now, there are some cookies that work well in various browsers that allows you to log in seamlessly. You have to create multiple logins in various instances, but it's not necessarily ideal. Where if they're in the single side on the left side over here, they can toggle back and forth between the various categories and stay within the same experience without having to log in. So I know a lot of information here. If there's any questions, just let me know. I'm going to give visual examples of what this looks like. So in my Domo career, Japanese was incredibly important. And that was the first country that Domo went to once they launched the product. And we had data that showed the usage of languages in our actual core product. And Japanese was really the only language where we truly needed to deliver a full-on experience. However, we ended up what we did here is we had a single server strategy. So for Japanese, they would be in their Japanese product, they would navigate straight to the Japanese experience. But having said that, there are some tools that are out there where all of the content can be localized with Google Translate. There's actually a widget that you can embed in every page. So you can certainly go to the URL up here for the community. Again, this is the main landing page. You can see that on every page we have this Google Translate widget. And what we did is we displayed the languages that we supported in our product. You can certainly add many more than this. And what it does is Google Translate has grown up a lot. It's improved dramatically from even 5 and 7 years ago. So again, this is a full-on English experience. If I select, let's say, French here, you can see that it's taken all of the English content and translated it into French, and that's real time. So you can see pretty much most everything on this page has been translated. There are some smaller elements that, once you get into the details, you would see that we're not fully on because it knows, let's say, that you're an English user of the product. And for the Japanese experience, when you log in from the Japanese experience, it would take you straight into here. Now, again, coming in or using the Google Translate widget, in this particular case, it did not translate the header. However, if I came in through product and went straight into the Japanese experience, those parameters would be carried over into the community, and this piece would be fully localized. So again, this is what a single server experience is. It covers probably 95% of the experience can be fully localized. And as I said, Google Translate does a pretty good job. In the case of our Japanese experience, though, we did manage internally all of the translations, the mouse overs, and so forth. Again, here in this case, it knows that I'm an English user. That's why some of these elements are showing up as, oh, shoot. That's why these things are showing up as, English widgets. But again, for the Japanese user, that would not be the case. Now, if we go to the examples of multi-server, and I'm still showing my desktop, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So here, this is the HP support community that we built out back in 2008. This is the English experience. You can see here that it has, oh, one more thing. You'll see here that the URL for the Domo community, everything starts with dojo.domo.com. It's the same URL. In the case of HP, you can see that the URLs are actually distinct to each language. And so this is the English one. And you can see here that the layout, and the important thing here is that you want to deliver a consistent experience across the various communities. And so you take a snapshot of what this layout looks like. This is the top half of the page. The lower half of the page, you've got the top contributors, but also in the bottom right corner, there's a drop-down menu that shows you the other available communities for HP consumer support. So this is drop-down here. And now you can see this is what the Spanish experience looks like, again, on the same page. The layout is very similar, almost identical, but this has been fully localized into Spanish, and it has a different URL. And effectively a different login than what we would have had in English. Same is true, this is Portuguese. Very similar layout. So again, the branding is consistent across languages. People know that this is HP consumer support. And this is simplified Chinese. So just giving a flavor of what that experience looks like. And I kind of called it earlier on the earlier slide, the pros and cons. So to summarize, again, understand your customer's language and cultural needs, know where they're located, define those localization needs, build a business case, and deliver. Again, I'll share this out later. This is how you can find me. But I'm going to stop sharing now. How do I stop sharing? All right. At the half hour.
Pretty quick, considering you usually have these as two separate lectures and presentations.
Okay, so let's see. Any questions so far? Mike.
So how do you build a community? I'm joking. So
what is a community, Mike?
What is a community?
Well, you need 4 cups of water and
what are we doing here?
So I have a, go ahead, Mike.
And ladies first, like an hour. No, Nate. Talia, go.
So I was gonna ask, you see, I forgot what the entire conversation.
Who are we? Again,
I'm
it's
gonna
like,
type it up next
we're old. Yeah, that's what happens to old people. We forget what we're doing in the middle of doing it.
I think I'm like 10 years older than you, Mike.
We're not old, we're experienced.
Hey, we're 30s, 40s, 50s. We're like all a rainbow of ages. Anyway, and so I was going,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about, I'm the 40, of course. That is it. Anyway, I was going to ask Dani. Dani, what's going to be your first steps now that you're joining Kaltura? Like, you're already there for a few weeks. Like, practically, what are you going to do? How's going to look your next your calendar for the next few months?
Excellent question. So again, just joined Kaltura. Kaltura's been around for a long time, 14 years. The beauty and one of the things that attracted me to Kaltura is the fact that they have a great customer base. They've got more than 1,000 amazing logos in higher education, enterprise, but they don't really have a true community in the sense that we know it. So right now, I'm very focused on what I would consider, it's called discovery. I'm doing a deep dive in meeting. I've had over 30 meetings already with people inside of Kaltura across various organizations, really trying to understand what's working well, what's not working well. More importantly, how are where are the conversations happening with the customers today? I want to understand, what are the support conversations like? What are the conversations like with the account representatives, with the customer success managers, with the executives? And understand the nature of the conversation, and from them understand what's going well, what's not going well, where are there opportunities to improve the customer journey, the customer experience, and at the same time get from them their perspective on what they would like to see in a future community, which again becomes a hub. It's all about, community is about managing the customer relationship. You want to be able to connect your customers together and also allow them to engage with your brand. So on that point, I've now started to engage with actual customers, and they are like jumping off their chair when they get to meet me because they're so happy there's someone here now to finally do this. They've been asking for it for some time. They're super excited. They actually, and again, the brand can choose not to do it, but that doesn't matter. The conversation is going to happen anyway. And so the customer's already created a listserv community 8 years ago. They've, in the education space. The key is you want to manage that conversation so that you, the brand, can actually have visibility to it. It's the information and the data there is a gold mine. And you have an opportunity to strengthen that relationship every day by listening and engaging. And so really right now it's about meeting with those passionate customers who know the brand, who know the product, and have them tell me, what's going well, what's not going well, but more importantly, capture the requirements. The other thing, which is I see a great opportunity for the future community, which will happen in 2021, you need to have those super fans. You need to have those people that know the brand really well, and they're out there, and I'm meeting them now. And so when I meet them, the incentive for me is I offer them up. Look, I want you to be part of the team. I'm going to invite you into the development environment as we start to build out the new community, and I'm going to invite you to become founders in our new Kaltura community. And they see that like, oh my God, this is amazing. When can we go? And I don't promise them a date. I don't promise them, because again, it's all we're still pending approval. But that's, again, 1 month discovery. Once they get through discovery, we then go through management to get approvals for investments. And then we start to select vendors, put a plan together, and then we kick ass Dani.
I have to say, Dani, it's really funny to hear you talk about this process because it is literally a copy paste of my process when I got to Payoneer. You just entered a company that, I don't know their financials, but they've been around for a very long time. So they're a company that's already established. They already have users. They're probably profitable. And I did the same. I also entered Payoneer as a profitable company, but that had literally no community built. And what was most important about building the Payoneer community is that there were just tens of thousands of people who were just waiting for someone to organize them. And the moment we started doing something, it just blew up. And literally every single step of what you said now was things that I did as well. Except this was like in 2011. And so people were like, who are you and what do you want from my life? Like people didn't understand what I was doing there. Except for the founder who brought me in. And it was really funny because one of the things he loved saying about me the most to other people was this was our first customer, and now she's running our community department, because I worked at MetaCafe, which was the first customer that ever worked with Payoneer. And so I was their first client, and then I became their director of community. And, you know, the second we started, it took off. The moment I, you know, started talking in the forums, we started expanding. It was everything you said. We figured out who the top users were, who was talking about us, where they were talking about us. And we did whatever we could to kind of do that. And I have these very funny, like, I know exactly the dates where things happened, because a year almost to the day of me arriving at Payoneer, I gave birth. And so I know exactly how many people I had in what languages when I gave birth, and then when I came back and a year later, like, so I kind of divided up according to, you know, my life. And it exploded for us. I mean, I had someone working part-time as a community manager in English who was in the Army at the time, so he couldn't work full-time anyway. And within like 2 months, I had to bring another person in. And then I already had someone, I did something really stupid. And 3 weeks before giving birth, I went into a Spanish forum, because one of our very active users said, listen, Talia, there's this forum in Spanish that is talking about you all the time, and I think you could do a really great job if you went in there. And stupidly, I went into this forum 3 weeks before having a baby, and it consumed almost my entire day. Within days, the amount of people that were coming in from Spanish-speaking countries grew exponentially, and there were so many questions and so much going on, and crazy amount of signups. And I ended up I spent my last week training someone from our customer support department on how to do community management, because we didn't have time to hire someone that would have any experience. And what ended up happening was about a month and a half or 2 months after giving birth, I had to come back to the office with a little baby to interview people, because it couldn't wait another month for me to actually bring in a Spanish language community manager. And we were just planning so many languages ahead, and we got Chinese, and then there were so many languages added, Arabic, and my next one was Russian, because we saw, by the way, Russian wasn't necessarily one of the languages that was being spoken the most, but we saw the potential of the market, because they had a very big need for what we were offering them. And so our decision was to make sure we have a community manager, so that we could start doing the work from the bottom up for the Russian community and the Russian speaking community. I apologize. So it's very exciting when you get to start from scratch, but like that, you know that it's going to be big really, really fast. And so you really have to make the plans. Like phase 2 comes a minute after phase 1, and phase 6 comes 3 minutes after phase 2. So it's really exciting to me. There are a few questions here. There was a question from Michael Jaffe. Can I?
QC process.
I would. What? Yeah, I would really love him to raise his hand, but he's not raising his hand. So
no, yes, he just raised his hand. Hold on.
Yes.
He just. There you go.
Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if you can. Oh, hang on a second. My camera's not set. There we go. Now my camera should be set. I have 2 cameras, and the one that I like isn't working. The one I don't like is. But okay, I guess you can see me.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. No, I was fascinated by Dani's presentation, and really, I mean, it seems so intuitive, and it's so well conceived. And I wanted to know, I mean, when you're building your community, I'm sure you're getting constant feedback. I'm just wondering if it's formalized, if the process is formalized in a quality control manner. I mean, how are you getting your feedback, and you're talking, what are the most effective and efficient ways of doing it?
Right, and you're talking before you go live.
I'm sorry?
Is your question before you go live, the quality control?
Yes, that's what I meant. I guess so, yeah. But also, I mean, as the process goes, I know that things are changing as, I guess, as your customers are, as your community's expanding.
Right. So I've had the fortunate, I've had the opportunity to work, with some, some of the leading enterprise software platforms like Lithium for a long time. And both in the case of HP and even with Domo, I had project teams, supporting us from those companies. So we got to learn early on from some of the best people in the industry, such as Brian Oldland and others. Having said all that, so you've got project teams to help you, build out and help define the experience. But you've got to work across the organization on, making sure your branding is appropriate, you're delivering, the right UI and experience. the one key thing as far as the QC, the quality control, especially as you get to multi-languages, you've got to have people that are native language speakers. So as when I did English back in HP, that launch plan was about 8 weeks. By the time I got to German, which was the 7th language, I had it back to 4 weeks. But that doesn't mean I cut corners. It's really you got to have people that are native language speakers to test the entire UI, all the mouse overs, the experience, and so forth. But from a community experience, one of the things that's worked well for me over the years is you do not want to boil the ocean. You do not want to have every single category that support has. You want to keep it really small. Maybe have 1 or 2 large categories, or maybe 4 or 5 discussion boards, and force a lot of volume into a small number of conversations early on. After that, the customers are going to tell you what you should be talking about, and it should be a customer-driven conversation. And so as you start to see new flavors of conversations, these platforms typically allow you to grab a subset of those conversations, move it to a new grouping, you create a new board, and you're done. But again, it's about assembling key team of people that can help you do the right reviews, the right QC. There's a fair amount of work that has to happen ahead of time. You've got to spend time with engineering on a single sign-on integration, with legal on T's and C's, privacy, making sure security is to your standards. If you've got customers that are, large international banks or Department of Defense, they've got concerns about, privacy issues. And even now you've got, GDPR in EMEA, and it's pretty standard now. Most of these vendors have kind of grown up and they meet that need. So hope that helps.
Thank you.
And the last thing is too, it is an evolution. There's a constant iteration, on the experience. It's not just going live at one time, and you want to be able to capture that feedback from customers, iterate, and continually to improve.
I have a question. We have another raised hand. Olivier.
Yeah, you want to bring him up, or I'll do it?
I can't see how to. When I right click, all I can do is direct message.
I'm the manager of community. I'm the only one who can bring people.
No, but I see him, so that's teasing.
Can you hear me?
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey.
All right, my camera should work, but anyway, hey, great presentation, very very interesting. I have a question.
Hey, you can put your camera underneath, or it just doesn't work, because we would love to see you. It's just underneath. You should see like a camera and sign, and then you just turn it on. Here you are.
Yeah, I can see myself, so you guys probably can see me. No, as I was saying, great presentation. I'm curious about one aspect of the language thing. Any thoughts on having a technology that would allow multilingual threads? Here's what I mean. Let's say I start a thread in French, then you guys read it. I'm making assumptions. And you guys read it in Hebrew and English. There's a reply that is being written natively in Hebrew. I read it in French, and someone else reads the entire thing in Japanese and so on. I have been reluctant on such a model, but it feels to me like the technology will improve, and it's only a matter of time when such an experience will become decent enough to revolutionize the multilingual community field. What do you think?
We should have Brian Oblinger answer this at 10 o'clock when we have the session. Hey, Olivier, are you going to stay with us with the session with Brian?
Yeah, absolutely.
He knows Brian really well. So Olivier's over at the Alteryx, and good to see you. I think I mentioned the Lithium conference last year. So to your point, and I've been using Lithium back, of course, now since 2008. I think the first Lithium conference I went to in 2009, they almost kicked me out because I was asking too many questions. And I actually asked Phil for that question in 2009. I said, are you guys thinking about creating a technology where I can ask a question in French and it can be responded to? I can read it, I can read and write my content in whatever language I desire. Now, my knowledge today is it doesn't exist. In my Dome experience, I had a Japanese user who was a rock star, and he was actually writing posts in Japanese and in English. He was contributing to both the Japanese section and the English section. I'm like, this guy's amazing. And then when I met him, we ended up hiring him. The guy didn't speak a word of English. And I said, how did you do all the posts? He said he was using Google Translate real time to create all this content. Okay. And even when we sat in the same conference room, we were using Google Translate voice with our Macs. He was talking Japanese into the Mac and would come out English. I would talk English, would come out Japanese.
We did that in Japan. There were
Yeah.
some places that we were in Japan that were so like holes in the wall that they couldn't communicate with us. And they actually have apps that are better than Google Translate. Sorry if anyone from Google's here. But they have other apps that they use that work so well, and they're just used to it. Like you come in, they see you drive in, and they just open it like, and they play it up for you, and it's insane.
Right. So Olivia, I mean, that is kind of if someone can nail that really well, that's huge, because then there's no need for multi-server. You have everything in one community globally. Yeah. It doesn't matter what language you want to consume or write in. It's real time.
Would be lovely.
That would be really great at my house because my kids speak French and I don't. So.
Speaks French. Cool. We have to wrap up. Olivier, I also checked out if Dani knows you, I have to know you. So I checked you already and pinged you on LinkedIn. Looked like a really community monster. How don't I know, Olivier? You need to be in the next community, in the next ISCL summit as a speaker, I think. You don't have any way out. You see, I bring people in the field. And when I find you, that's it, you're done. So great. Thank you for a great question. And tout à l'heure, I also speak a bit French. I lived in Paris for 4 years. But that's it. So guys.
Who didn't flush the toilet, so.
What?
All I can say, because I have small kids.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
This was going.
Guys, thank you so much, Olivier. Thank you all, guys. Michael for the great questions. Dani for the amazing presentation. Talia, also you for all the insights and sharing. And that's it. We'll see you soon, guys. In the next sessions. Next session, by the way, women empowered communities, monetizing your community with Gali, and the second track, and the do's and don'ts for building an innovative communities. Stay tuned. If you want to continue the conversation with Dani and Talia, they're going to the lounge. You don't have any other way. You have to go to the lounge and pick up a conversation with somebody. See you in the lounge, guys. Cheers. Bye.
I'll be there. Mike, Aluf. Tada, guys. You too, Talia. Great job.
The stage participant is still on, so we have to take Olivier off. Wait. Remove. And now we end this.